You sound like a very nice person and you're coming from a very good place. And I'm not sure about your particular lineage. Um, Maybe your lineage or your ethnic group did not participate in the transatlantic slave trade, but there were many that did. I've read this book by the African slave trader named Antera Duke, and this was way back in the 1700s. He would keep a diary and he wrote a lot of stuff down. And inside this, he has the routes, Calabar, all that, and the names of certain boats and people, and how many enslaved or captured they would put onto the cargo boats and send away. There were also others who participated a lot around the Congo area, like Tipu Tip, but there were a lot of networks within the African continent. So you may have someone kidnapped from inside, let's say the Congo, right, the Congo region, and they would sail or boat or travel by land to another slave trader, okay, and then they would switch off like that and then all the way to the coast. That's what they would do. And so then you have people from all over coming to one spot to be traded to Europeans now. And I can list names of the African slave traders because I've actually read up on a lot of them. One of them, actually, I believe he was from Ghana, was accidentally traded in the transatlantic slave trade, and they had to get him back. Now, this is another book I've read, Barracoon. And this was documented by Zora Neale Hurston, and an African American woman. And this man right here, Cujo, he was one of the last cargo. Okay, and he gave an account of what happened to his parents and his ethnic group and how he ended up over here. And it was horrible. It was horrible. And that was the homie. Now, as to your question about what happened to many parts of Africa after we were shipped off, well, there was colonialism. Because after they take some of the strongest, because that's what the Europeans came for. They wanted some people to go over there and build what we have now over here in this land and other places, right? They needed that, okay? They needed skilled people. So a lot of the skilled people left. A lot of very skilled people left. From princes on down. A lot of them left. They were kidnapped and taken, sold right off. And it was a business between those who were heads of the slave trade. And there were many of them. We have documents over here in the United States of that. And of course, in Africa, there are different statues of slave traders in various parts. Not, I'm not sure everywhere, but they're in various parts. And there are also museums as well that talk about that history. But after they got the skilled workers to leave Africa, kidnapped them, enslaved them over here, it left many areas in Africa less populated and less able to stop what was getting ready to come, which was the white man was going to come in there and take over, which they did. Of course, throughout this whole time, they had help because Europeans did not know the landscape. They couldn't go inland without help. There's no way. There's absolutely no way they could have done that alone. And like I said before, I mentioned, I think Tipu Tip, he was one of them that helped over on that over more toward mid and east. But he was responsible for, matter of fact, Tippu Tip had a whole plantation with thousands of enslaved. Yeah. So no, you would not have been free. You would not have been free. And actually, the king of Dahomey, he didn't want the slave trade to stop. He didn't want that to stop. Oh, he was upset. He was angry. Oh yeah, very much. So there are actually people in Benin who know the story, and they don't like for some of their children to marry into the the family, the lineage who's responsible for the slave trade in that area. They don't like that. They had a whole special about that over here. Oh yeah, and a lot of those people, some of them live on the water because of that, because they were running from the slave traders. Yeah. So it was a business. European between the Europeans and the the European slave traders and the African slave traders. This does not say that every single African person or lineage or tribe did it. It's just what it is. Just like every single European didn't do it, but the ones in control did. Now, as far as you're getting the short end of the stick, because you said if we sold you, we would be free, but we got the short end of it. Ooh, um, no, I'm going to disagree. I do believe there's corruption that goes on, and I do believe because of colonization and the way they up and left and destroyed things and left things really even more divided. Um, Africa has quote unquote newer countries that has to sort itself out because of all the colonialism that went on. But and yes, there were bad things that happened. There was slavery even after colonial. Yes, so things did happen in Africa. However, I wouldn't say you got the short end of it. I wouldn't go so far as saying that. If you know exactly in depth what was going on over here, I wouldn't say that. And a lot of people don't know what in depth went on the slave, some of the slave ships on the way there. Horrible stuff. Horrible. To teenagers, to teenage girls, and to teenage boys, even when they got over. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it was short. It was some horrible times. Okay, it was horrible. But here we are today, and we have to make the best of today. But it's good to know the truth so that we won't repeat. So that we won't repeat. Because when you don't know the truth, you end up doing this, making the same mistakes. Yep. Or making the same decisions, or allowing people in power that will make those same decisions, or worse. Because that's all it was. People allowed the wrong people in power. And this is we see this playing out right now in the United States of America, allowing the wrong person to gain power. And that's what happened in many places in Africa. It's allowing the wrong people to gain power and to allow another tribe from a totally different continent to come into Africa and make them even more hateful of the groups that are their neighbors. Instead of all of them saying, "Hey, who the flip are you?" See, and that still happens today. So yeah.